But you can come
Here.
here.
And there was one second, we got 3 minutes to speak, but we'll make sure we got her timer going. You good to go?
Okay.
And just state your name and your address for the record.
My home address?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Jessica Tatum. I live at 124 North Ridge Drive, Asheville, North Carolina, I believe. I just moved here. So, I have a problem that I don't know who to bring to because it seems like it just keeps being swept under the rug. I have 2 jobs. I work at the airport as supervisor for the Hertz rental company. You guys have an overabundance of flights coming in. Sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about it. So we had a lot of people walk into the street. 2 minutes. So a lot of people are bringing their luggage. They're going down to the gas station to buy food because there's so many delays and cancellations, and so they're piling up and they're trying to get down there, and they're almost getting hit. So what I really wanted to do was get a sidewalk extension installed that won't impede anybody. Sorry. So, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, you're fine. If you need extra time, you can have extra time. Take your time.
Thanks. So I found out that it's about 4 meters down for water lines, and there's a hydrant that's over there that could really be put around. And I know it's 3 meters down for electrical wiring. So I really want to just extend it out so one gets hit. And I work at the gas station too, so people come in and they say they're throwing away some running late and they have to get out of the way. So I know I gotta get some permits. I tried talking to security at the airport. So sorry. And they said I gotta have like so many signatures and everything. And I know I can get like a good amount of signatures while I'm working at the airport. So I know people wouldn't mind signing that. But I'm not quite sure what else they have to do to get a sidewalk built. That's it.
Just out of curiosity, where is the sidewalk needed?
So it's at the bottom of the hill at the airport. So the airport is, I think, 61 Terminal Drive, and the gas station's at 95 Terminal Drive.
You mean the one right here off of Fanning Bridge Road?
Yeah.
That's actually in Multnomah County.
It's Buckle County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have to go there and tell them.
It might be airport property. Let me see after the meeting. I know there's folks at the airport out there that we probably can connect you into. We can work with, see where they need to go from there.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I think it definitely sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, because there's a car shortage right now.
You're fine. Keep going.
You're fine, this thing is not working right. Stop it.
It's like in my bloodline. And so there's always people who don't have enough cars to get where they're going, and there's a lot of tourists. And as a person who used to be a tourist and I live here, I don't really want to have anyone be stranded. So if they need to get food or something like that, I know they go down there. At least it gives them some time. And that's about it.
Now we can get you connected to the right fault talks to them about that.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Thank you for,
Did you intend to stay for the meeting? If not, if you want to leave your name and number so that Trevor can follow up or somebody can follow up with you?
I would like to say I've never been to a house.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Mark, you know somebody?
Well, I was just gonna, just one other suggestion, the airport director, so the airport administration, Lou Blywise, the executive director, would be another contact to talk about facilitating sidewalk connection, the sidewalks being built.
Well, the thing is,
And I know it goes outside their jurisdiction a little bit, but as far as partnering with maybe local governments to do that.
well, actually, there's a conflict of interest because my family does real estate, so that's why they even told me to come here. And so they said, actually talking to some of the staff that have like small businesses at the airport, they said that the owner of the airport operations management, or whoever controls finances, they didn't really want to install a sidewalk because it would take away from the income from the airport instead of protecting the people. So I thought it was probably not best to talk to them so they would try stopping me, I guess. That's it.
Well, I'll come talk to you in the meeting too, so we get the contact information and see if we can get you connected to the right people.
Okay.
We appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else that wishes to speak, public comment? You come forward. And just state your name and your address for the record. And we'll make our 3 minutes to go.
Okay, so,
I'm Dennis Justice, I walk River Street Road. I'll start my timer. I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Walker for inviting me to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting last month to discuss pickleball courts or what might happen at Billmore Park. I happened to stop by for movie night, and he was afraid, everybody was afraid it was going to get rained out. But the rain gods were nice to us. We had a great show. They had hundreds of people there, and it was great for their concessions. So I congratulate the Parks and Recreation Department. It's always great to have an outdoor event. Some of you are fully aware of my concern over the project. Of course, I have an interest in this. I was started a group called Blues Pickleball 4 years ago, and I stepped away from it. Since we started a Facebook group, I have a web page, not a web page, but a domain registered, blueridgepickleball.net. All it does is point to the Facebook page. And it's just, I'm just going to put stories there that they, I am concerned about whether or not we need a tennis court. After all, since there are 6 courts at North Henderson, 6 courts at West Henderson, and the lower 4 courts at Jackson Park that frankly need to be redone now. I was not physically able to attend the Hendersonville City Council meeting last Friday. I had to drive across the street, across the state to leave flowers on Lake White Strait to commemorate Wood's 50th birthday. And I was pretty emotional about that, but I found that they had passed 6 pickleball courts, and they were relocating 2 tennis courts. And there was a gentleman there, I forgot his last name, but his first name was Mr. Jones, said something about we need a pickleball complex and all this, and we need to have tournaments. I don't think our concern as Fletcher taxpayers should be keeping up with the Joneses. The concern, of course, is what's best for the Fletcher taxpayers. This is not a complex, this is a project. And I don't want to speak out of ignorance, but my concern is, because I have not seen the Hendersonville plan, I don't know if they're going to get rid of basketball courts, would be a real problem for me, because I have to take my son there once or twice a week. That might give you consideration, maybe a second court, but I have forwarded information to Mr. Jackson and of course the manager. There may be logistic liability, I mean, maybe not logistically possible to do everything, but right now, I'm not convinced we need a tennis court yet. We might just be better off just doing 1 basketball court, or 2 small ones, and 2 or 3 pickleball courts. But the thing I've been trying to advocate is let's have 1 wheelchair-friendly court. That's 74 by 44 feet. That is the minimum required to be a wheelchair-friendly court before the American with Disabilities Act, some politician gets an idea to amend it. I specified at the beginning, I got 10 seconds. Quality over quantity. And I hope we get lights. We don't need a shed yet. I don't think, if you do go to the pickleball court, please do not, you don't have to put pickleball lines on the tennis court. If you do a tennis court, if you do pickleball, don't put pickleball lines here, you don't need to. Let's show they can work before we decide to add more courts. 3 or 4 is fine. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else that wishes to speak in public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to updates from council. If there's any updates? Seeing none. We got a consent agenda. Any questions, comments, concerns related to that?
Mayor, and I don't mean to interrupt, council, any questions on it? The bond on there for the phase 1 infrastructure, the authors subdivision on Rutledge Road, we put that on as a consent. It's pretty straightforward as far as what is being required of the developer, spelling out those infrastructure improvements to the value. The engineer for them does that, and we also, as an extra step, have another engineering firm review their calculations or numbers. And so we had Gill Associates take a look at it. I think when Ben's here tonight, I think Eric actually got Associates to verify the values. It's sidewalks, final course of the streets and trees.
Anything more from council? All right. Item number 4, next is our public hearing pertains to stormwater requirements. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none?
And I had
Go
to
ahead.
add one, excuse me, Mayor. I know we had, we had a representative from Gill Associates here last month. I think they addressed most of the questions that y'all had. Eric just asked me if you wanted them back for the regular meeting. Eric Rufo will be here to present the item. So I don't know.
Weston's making the public first, open the public comments. Public for questions.
I'm sorry.
I think Eric probably.
Yeah, I think he can. I just wanted to see if y'all wanted that.
I think
Okay,
it's
all right, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5 is proposal to create a police cadet position. I know Chief Terry's going to present on that. So you here next week. You have anything on that board?
And not to steal his thunder, but essentially we're trying to compete with other police agencies out there, and we currently do not pay for a recruit to go through BLET, the basic law enforcement training. But now it's becoming more and more the norm that you go through a screening process and hire that person and hire them as whatever you want to call it, trainee or cadet, and they're actually a paid employee going through BLET while they're there. We don't do that. We sponsor people sometimes, and basically they're committing to come to Fletcher if they pass the whole application process, but we don't do a hired trainee or cadet in going through BLET. So Chief Terry's going to talk to you a little bit more about that. And, we've got a position classification. We would just go and do this, as long as we had the funds for it. But our personnel policy says if we create a new position classification, that it has to go before council, and this creates a new position classification. We're not looking for additional appropriations of funds. There's enough in the current budget to cover this at this time. If there is, in subsequent years, we'll include that as part of the budget process.
It sure seems like a no-brainer to me.
The only commitment I have, and you should probably relay it to Chief Terry, is that I think there needs to be some kind of a commitment on the part of the employee.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to be paying
Yeah,
for their education and they'll go somewhere else.
Now, yeah, and not to get, it's a good point, and we have thought about that. I mean, they'll sign a commitment letter, which is, stating, it's like any new hire, but it's spelling out that, when you do this and we hire you, you're making a commitment to come here if you successfully complete BLET. So no, and we've thought about a contract, and those are, they're difficult to enforce, like trying to get someone to pay it back at the end of it is not super practical. But there is that understanding, but also a written letter of commitment that they agree to come here once they complete it.
It just seems like it has to be something that
I agree.
is enforceable.
I agree with you. My question, Mark, and then we get Mark so he's next week when she's here. But so, as far as 17.66 an hour, I believe I remember that correctly. So are they paying that hourly wage when they're in class or just here?
No, this is paying them while they're going through the BLET classes. Yeah, they're a paid employee going through the training program.
Are you aware of who else in the county doing this? Like how it's been for them?
Yeah, we'll have some,
Chief.
who else is doing it? There's quite a few that
Okay.
are doing that now. So we're just trying to stay competitive, and
Yeah.
and they're getting,
Yeah.
and they're getting
I was
good
wondering how
candidates, and they've got
successful
them
it was.
committed, and so it's not everyone, but it's becoming a little bit more the norm than the exception. And others, if you read the report, other states, that was kind of common practice, but really rare in North Carolina, but now it's becoming that way in this state, just because of the hard time getting applicants.
I don't view that as any differently than when a company hires you and you sign a contract, and then you spend several weeks of training at a decent pay. It's not gonna be in the mid-range or the top range, but it's your entry-level pay for that position. So I don't view it any differently than that.
I agree with Mark, it's not just law enforcement, all emergency services are going into that now.
Sure.
We're hiring people going in, moving them to academy, because any jobs nowadays are people looking for work, so we gotta think outside the box, that's the thing outside the box.
Anything more from council? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 6, discussion on the final design concept for multi-use courts at Wilmore Court.
We've got Nate Sawyer on there. Nate Sawyer could not be here. Ben Cappy with Gale Associates was going to provide some comments. I mean, I could just kind of, essentially you've got, and Ben, if you please share other things that I may be missing here, but we wanted to have a representative of McGill, because we've been working with them on the
And no
design.
worries, I thought that was Ben, I saw Nate on the paper, and I said, I don't think that's right, so I want to make sure I wasn't calling you the wrong name.
I think he's disguised himself here.
Man, my memory that bad. But the floor is yours.
Yeah, and so and Ben, sure, I think he's got electronically the sketches, but so at the last meeting, or last month's meeting, we talked about a iteration of a concept of how the courts would be laid out. We got some feedback from you all. And then, since then, McGill has worked on some other different concepts. I know one of the specific things that we got feedback from you all was to add some more goals on the basketball court. So that's in each of the 3 options. So, and I'll probably turn it over to you, Ben, here when we get into the bigger ones. So the first 2 have a couple. The first one's really just a slight change from what was presented last month. And then the second one tries to incorporate, and I'm sorry, I'm going to do this right now, is incorporating a hybrid version of this pickleball and tennis courts. So what you're seeing there is the basketball, 2 half courts back to back, and then the 2 tennis courts that can be converted to 4 pickleball courts. So that is the second one, and then the third is 4 back-to-back basketball court, 1 full-size tennis court, and then 4 pickleball courts. The biggest difference on the 4th is we're going over the minimum. There's a max square footage of impervious surface that can be put down before it requires bioretention areas, and basically stormwater runoff. And that last one gets over that 20,000 square feet threshold. And we wanted to put that together, well, to give another way to do this, but provide more space for the courts, get more court value there, if you will. But then we need to kind of walk you through what the impacts are. So you've got, then the next 3 pages are the cost estimates for option 1, option 2, and then option 3 being that last one, which is that biggest footprint. So you've got them ranging from 333,000 all the way up to 451,000 is their estimate on that option 3.
I've got a question on some of that. If you divided it and made the tennis court separate, would that then reset your limit of dirt that you're on?
It actually, the stormwater becomes, in looking at all the layout options, and that's how we kind of got to here. We're pushing right up next to the 20,000 square foot threshold that we can put in without the stormwater treatment. And the critical part of that is that's something that would track, you know, if we put in 19,000 square feet of impervious surface and then you come back in 2 years and you want to add a pad for something, it's going to push us over that 20,000 and then have to go do stormwater. So that just becomes a very critical aspect that we thought all of y'all needed to see. And it does restrict you pretty tightly to try to get all 3 uses in on under 20,000. I mean, you know, it's tight courts, it's tight play limits, and things like that. So that's why I want to show these other options. So I guess where do you want me to go through each one? Would that be the best thing?
I think so.
Okay. And then I don't know who can see where. What do I need?
Well, everybody up here is good, and I had to put the screen down because those monitors are not working.
Okay.
We're
so
seeing
y'all-
it.
y'all-
We're seeing it on ours, so we're okay.
Okay.
They got it in their monitors.
All right. So this was similar to that base option, and I believe this was 19,000 and some change.
Can we hit the light so they can see this? I'm so sorry to
You're
interrupt.
fine. You're fine.
Can we hit the light so they can see it better? Because there's so much light on the screen.
Am I talking loud enough for y'all to hear me?
You're great.
Is that better?
That's good, good saying.
And Ben, you might want to come up to the mic and we can get it recorded
Well,
better.
Okay.
If you-
you don't have to
Or
stand.
take that
No,
down,
you
yeah,
can
I'll
sit
do it
down
either
just a
way.
second. There you go.
Thank you.
Like I'm on Teams meeting now. Talking into the mic. I'm not gonna film it too, are you?
As long as you don't start singing.
It's already happened.
You're safe. All right, like Mark said, this is similar to the first option that you guys saw a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. And this does have, it's got the tighter courts. We put the 4th goals in, but they're kind of on the side of the main basketball courts. There's some drawbacks. This keeps it under the 19,000 square feet. It's just each court is tight. We got the 3 uses in, each court's a little bit tight. But we would not have to do stormwater, but you would be sitting at your limit to where any impervious surface that you added in the park could be pushing you over that requirement and then come back and treat stormwater in the future. Those were 60 by 40 pickleball courts. Basketballs were 50 wide, which is standard width, but they're also right beside each other, so we didn't have a buffer between them. And then I think this is on the tighter range as far as your extra playing room around the tennis court. This is very tight as well. And then just minimal connecting sidewalks and so on and so forth. Any thoughts or questions there?
How many goals did you add on the basketball there on this?
This one, there's 4, but they're just,
Okay. 2
and
inches.
they're just kind of awkwardly placed right now.
On the end.
There's going to be, it's almost just to pick one shoot, but you're not going to play a game and shoot. There's just hardly the room to do that. I would, as someone who likes basketball, this would frustrate me. So
Can you play can you play a game on half?
you could on the two half courts on this one. I mean, somebody could stand over there and, you know, shoot 5-footers and layups a little bit, but if they start shooting from any distance, there's gonna be balls bouncing over in that
I
direction.
don't like the goals on the side here.
Yeah,
I think it'd be better to have 2 goals on this
Right.
particular
Yeah,
one, because if you're playing a basketball game, there's no way anybody's gonna go shoot on the side anyways.
they could stand there, like I say, you just have to be shooting layups. So, yeah, I would agree. If I were doing this, I would almost, I think that was a specific, the 4 goals was, in this layout, 4 goals was very impractical.
Any more questions on this one? We'll go on to the next one, if you don't mind again.
Option 2, now this does,
That's the goals for that stuff.
this kind of, this is a 2 half courts back to back, you extend it. Now this one you could actually, somebody's playing a game, somebody could stand up there and they could shoot a little bit. This could work. It's from a basketball perspective.
At a half court,
We'd have the 2 half courts, and then with the 2 extra goals kind of extended, that would be, I think these were, well, that was,
It kind of looks like a full court, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
2 half courts that are back to each other. They're back to back.
Goal to goal.
Yes, goal to goal, and then you've got one at each other end to get that 4th, 2 other courts, goals, not courts, but goals.
Now, what kind of square footage are you on this?
this one is just under, it was 19,000.
Okay.
And I've got the exact amount, but it's in the 19,000. But the drawback here is you have the shared pickleball and tennis, which I know has been a big no-no, and there you have a mixed use. It's like, what is it today? Is it tennis or pickleball? And who's going to put out the pickleball nets? And, so that's one of the big drawbacks here. It's like you get all 3 functions, you got better spacing for some things, but then you have the mixed use, so that was kind of the drawback.
Sounds like one thing they need to be separated, really like that.
did you think about maybe doing the 2 pickleball on one side and then a tennis on the other, to where there's another option? I understand, I heard what you said about the, indecision, and I think Mills River, when I talked to them, they shared that if you can do them separate, do them separate. They said it's, for use of the better word, frustrating.
Yep.
Like you just said about the basketball, because, it's just not fun to try and share or figure out who's going to do what on the court. So I was just looking at this thinking, I saw that last option, and I know you're getting to it, but I wonder if it would be another option to do the 2 pickleball on one side and the tennis court on the other.
The fitting 2 lengthwise, you basically end up, you could do 3 for what you could do 2 when you turn them sideways. And if you turn it lengthwise, you can only do 1 and fit it into that space.
You're talking about pickleball, right?
Yes, if you pull them out separate.
So you do 3.
And we've done we juggled this around like a puzzle so many times, I can't remember if I have seen that exact option or not.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there.
And you're talking about, we would have to turn the tennis court back north-south per the page here, and then if you turn your pickleballs east and west, like I say, you're about to do 3 for what you can do 2, but then the length of them starts pushing you over. So let's, to jump over,
How many square feet is this one up here?
23,000.
And the question is, I know we added additional pickleball court, if you removed back down to 3, would that still put you right back at 19, or close to the 20 mark?
Even if it wasn't a perfect rectangle.
Yeah, even if it was a perfect
Yeah.
rectangle. Because we had 3 on all the first 2 plans, now you add
And we
additional.
could we could do what's, and I guess that staying in that constraint, we could take off 2 of these And probably, I don't think one gets us there, but, let me pull up my square footage real quick. 23,735, so 60 bucks, so 240, or 2,400, no, one doesn't get us there, we'd have to do two. So, we could do, it wouldn't be in the rectangular shape, it would be a small, but that's fine to do. There's nothing that requires that.
Are we kind of just looking at a $20,000 difference, not including material, because it's a bigger pad, it's a bit more material for that project? But it looks like under the erosion, we're at 20,000, that's just an additional to what the other ones would not have?
When we jumped to option 3.
Yeah, because we went over the 20,000 square feet.
The biggest part of that is that we have to then treat that for, we have to detain that and then put a water quality, so we have to put bioretention cells in.
So that's not included in the estimate of the court?
On number 3, on the first two, it's not, since we're under the 20, but on the third one, you'll see that stormwater item is in it. And actually, the other piece of that is we need to put those over, we would actually put those in the strip between the parking lot and the roadway on the parking lot over to our, and I'll pull it up on Google Maps and that, but so we'd actually put the bioretention in for the parking lot and swap for putting this impervious area in.
So it's more like 80,000. 60 plus the 20.
On which part,
On the third part, yeah, basically the stormwater and the extra erosion control.
Yeah, and then and then actually,
permits.
and then there's a little more design as well to actually design the bioretention cells.
Can I ask Craig, what kind of demand have we had recently for tennis courts?
So the tennis courts in 2016, when we did our master plan, they were one of the most popular pieces that the public voted they would like to see as we were looking at the meritorious piece. So that's why we still suggested tennis courts. I'm of the opinion that we have one shot at doing this. We're looking at the next 20 years of what recreation need is in this community. If you build a basketball court and pickleball courts, you will have tennis people come and say, where's our courts?
Yeah.
So I think on the front end, regardless of how many you put, A, B, C, and D number of courts, I think you should look at the potential, if you have the space to do all 3 court systems, to provide opportunities for all of the users. Also, based on the weather we had this most recent weekend, I'm pretty much a proponent of doing whatever water erosion control we can do on the front end so that our staff doesn't have to deal with the fallout of the flooding of brand new courts every year.
Now that our stormwater problem won't help.
It'll still flood.
The thing that I wonder about is if you have one tennis court and multiple people come, somebody's going to be waiting a long time, more than likely. I'm just not sure how well that's going to work.
Yeah, you get previous courts that I've operated. I worked at Jackson Park. We operated courts at July. We did time limits and sign-ups with our online registration we've got.
Oh, okay.
We could have AM hours that people can register the night before to be on the courts from 7:30 to 9. The next court system would open up at 9:15. So it's manageable, but the public has to engage by using their online capabilities.
But the day camp could also use that, like for Foursquare or
Right.
something like that for the kids during the day.
Yeah, during the middle of the day when,
Yeah, 4 different groups or something.
when it's hot and the general public's not going to come out to play.
Now, the drawing right here on plan 3, it looks like there's like dashes, like it can be extended out later in the future, so if it,
Yes.
that right there, so basically, if we extend it later in the future, there's a more demand tennis, and put another tennis court there, I was talking about that, we would still need the stormwater for that piece as well, correct?
Well,
Or
if we went with this option, there get the small increment to make that bioretention cell big enough that we would do the bioretention cell to handle the expansion. Such that, yes, if you do, if one of these concepts is very successful, or you get a high demand and you want to expand, then the bioretention in place. It's just come do the expansion on the end and move on.
So we basically put the money up front.
Yeah, and at that point, it is just making it a little bit bigger, and it's not repeating the design and permitting and all that process, so that incremental increase probably would be pretty small. It's
Let
just
me
a
ask you,
jump
Greg,
race when we hit 20.
your gut feeling, if we needed to expand, what would we be expanding next?
Currently, in today's environment, it would be pickleball most likely, if you had to add additional courts, based on the popularity of that sport nationwide and in the state of North Carolina.
Have you considered anywhere else in the park? How did you feel about other spots in the park
I
when
mean,
you were looking?
There's only two options. There's this location and taking away one of the lacrosse fields. Everything else is way problematic because of floodway situations within the rear end of the park.
Okay, thank you. Because, you know, it just is a typical layman out walking, it's like, get all this space.
That big green open field in the back, it's a lake.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you.
My preferred option is option 3.
Mine too.
I agree.
We got
I'm
one,
all
so
about 3.
expanding.
Ben, what was your favorite?
I got the 3 too, because all the limitations staying under 20, it was like you felt like, okay, we're compromising, the goals are crammed in here,
Yeah.
everything's tight, you know, it's like, I know it's a significant jump in funding, but it's like, if you're gonna spend $300,000, do you want it to be tight and small and people complain about its use, or do you want to, I know this is nice.
You want it to be done to where they can enjoy it.
Right.
You want to do it right once.
I guess that's how I feel sitting here drawing, and it's like, man, you know, you feel like it's like,
Yeah,
let's,
too tight the other way.
If you grow, it'd be more needs in the basketball court, there more need tennis, but tennis grow, it depends on what it is, we see how popular each one is.
And that's kind of what I was getting to, is that if we think a certain sport has a higher chance of being expanded, we should put that one on the end so they're together, but it sounds like pickleball might be the thing that might need expansion.
I don't think we found getting both ends.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. When there's fencing going
Yeah.
through everything, it won't matter.
Yeah, Ben pointed this out just in the, staff and engineer meeting, and they're like, yeah, you should have this information and look at another option, just because it felt tight, and I know it's more money, but we wanted to let you see this in another, design concept and know what the cost is, so, and we have to bid it. I mean, it could be above the bid range, and we'll see, but, generally, McGill's provided estimates to try and get to that mark or something below it.
yes, the big environment is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
I will not,
Yeah, to me, the third option's the only one that comes close to making sense.
Yeah. You got something more?
I was just gonna say, unless there's other questions for Ben while he's here, or if you need McGill Associates back next week, we can just have this as an action item. I'll just leave it under this.
Officially vote on it.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
officially vote on it at the regular meeting. And then after that, then they would go to full design and bid. So we'll give you a timeline on that.
Thank you. Anything more from council? Good. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Moving on to item number 7, the extension of the PSA agreement for the town center project. Mr. Manager?
Thanks, Mayor. We're continuing to try and get this transportation improvement issue resolved, and we're not there. We're getting closer. The congestion management in Raleigh has reviewed the traffic impact analysis, sent it back to the local DOT office here. They've reviewed it, and I think just as of today, I saw a letter that went back to the developer's consultant doing the traffic engineering, or the traffic impact analysis. And it looks like they're going to accept what's recommended in the TIA. They didn't comment on these other options that we've been talking to you about, the roundabout and the third crossing and other things. So the next step is we got to get comments back from DOT, and it goes to the developer. Will be part of that meeting on how much they want them to contribute to this cost of it. That's the big kicker on this. Or I don't know if it becomes a negotiation. I hope it's a negotiation. If it's something that really, in their mind, is excessive for their part of the contribution or what's being asked. So having said all that, we need more time on the PSA, at the purchase and sale agreement. I was hoping to have, the agreement, a longer period of time. I've been in communication with our attorney who's been assisting with this, Ashley Anderson, and I spoke to her today. She's talked to the legal representation for the developer team, and what we'd like to suggest and have action at the October meeting, and probably the public hearing, it changes a little bit because it adds more specifics in the TSA about not the deal, but just what's outstanding, which is resolved in transportation improvements, but have an extension probably through the end of December for approval at the October meeting, and have a public hearing, and then more language in there that states the only thing that's outstanding right now is the resolution of the transportation improvements, that there's nothing else as far as due diligence on behalf of the developer, which I'm comfortable with that. They told me that, but kind of our advice from our attorneys that be part of the agreement, and probably some additional earnest money put up. So those are pretty much the nuts and bolts of what would be in there in October. And so really right now, if you could take action next week if you're comfortable, it's just giving a little bit more of a cushion to get that done in October. This would extend it to the end of October, but at the October meeting, you'd probably rescind this and then extend it out till December.
So could you go a little bit more details about what DOD has agreed to then? Are they're agreeing to the driveways that they originally wanted?
They haven't agreed to the driveways. What DOT is looking at right now is the improvements that are stated in the traffic impact analysis, which is, and I want to get more details on this, but was some reconfiguration of the traffic signal at Howard Gap in 25. It was an additional turning lane coming out of the project, like midway, which would be like the old Depot Street.
Yeah.
Turning right. And then the other, and this is the most substantive and expensive one, was a right-hand turn lane
Okay.
on the Fanning Bridge coming east, coming towards Town Hall, and it gives more relief for that traffic that stacks back there on Fanning Bridge Road.
Now, if all parties agree to this part of it, what happens to the property up there that DOT owns?
That's still to be determined, and that's why we gotta know what, dollar-wise, I guess, what they're gonna expect of the developer for the TIA improvements. Then the next thing, and I gotta see if they're gonna be comfortable with this, is, which of these other transportation improvements that are gonna be done eventually, I guess, for lack of a better word. If they do the roundabout, there's enough residual right of way that they could be comfortable getting that, from DOT,
Right.
purchasing it and going through that process. If it's not a roundabout, it depends which of the other options. If it's the third crossing, then they probably can get all of the residual right of way. If it's a roundabout, they should get everything they pretty much need, because it would, at least as it's been drawn, it cuts a little bit in there in front of the clock tower.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the other part of this, is they've got to be comfortable with some reasonable degree of certainty that they either can get the residual right away they want to do the project to the level that they, pitched to us and they want to do, as a developer doing a project like this, or are they comfortable giving up some part of that, and can they still reasonably do their project?
Right.
That's, those are the kickers in this thing. And DOT just they dropped this on us at that initial meeting where we were presenting the TIA, the results or preliminary findings of the TIA before it went to congestion management. So that's what we're dealing with. But if you're comfortable with that, we can do that. Ashley's working on the revised for greater extension of the agreement.
I'll say
If
on
there's any questions.
Oh, absolutely, I felt like September 30th was just not
Yeah.
work.
No, I didn't, kind of doubted it, but
Talking about moving to the December, correct?
that's what they're looking at. Yeah.
Good.
Anything more from council on that item? Okay. Moving on, item number 8. Staff report on the development of the citizen survey for public engagement efforts. Mr. Manager, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Mayor. So I know we've had a lot of conversation on putting some type of greater public engagement tool in place, and we talked about a survey, and so I've been doing some research on this, got in touch with school government, and they had some really good information. I've got a copy of an article that's attached to the report here, So You Want to Do a Survey is the title of it. It provides some really good context for if you're looking at doing a citizen survey, what types of ways to do the survey, the importance of determining on the front end what it is you're trying to accomplish, what you hope to get out of it, do with it at the end. So kind of put some good structure or conversation explanation on those different facets of considering a citizen survey. I looked at a whole bunch of them that school government had a good kind of website collection of them, and I can share that with you if you want to look at. It was quite a few to go through, and then I was then looking at companies, because if you're going to do this, right, and at least in my opinion on it, if you're going to do it, you probably want a good consultant assistance on putting it together, sending it out, and then analyzing the results. And I tried to bullet out, based on feedback from listening to you on kind of what issues or what it is you want to achieve. And this gets back to, on the front end, you got to think clearly about what it is you're trying to achieve, why you're doing this kind of thing. And one of them I know we've talked about is a general gauge of, I guess, satisfaction or evaluation of what we're doing now, so current services to the town. And then, possibly other types of services or maybe initiatives that our public might be interested in. And then kind of a third bullet I had here was the top priority of the town. And, I've got the Greenway development, the new library facility, town center project. And, you could have some, not necessarily ranking, but evaluation of feedback on some of these initiatives of the town. And that could be all part of a survey to help you get feedback on some of these things. And then hopefully, if we do this successfully, is you do it as you do another survey in a couple of years with close to the same format, so then you kind of evaluate progress or establish a baseline. So, I told an example from one of the towns, not a huge municipality, but town of Davidson. And it's a little bit dated of a survey, but it kind of got to some of the things I was mentioning, maybe what we're looking at, kind of that evaluation of existing services, and then some type of feedback on initiatives of the municipality or the town. And theirs wasn't, I thought was a decent one. It's a little bit old, but it's a fairly good, I thought they laid it out in a decent way without being too much information, too many questions to go through, or you sometimes lose that interest of the person who's wanting to take the time to do this and give you that feedback. I think that's an important consideration as well. But it's just one example. I don't want to bombard you, and of course I can email you all kinds of stuff on this, but it's one that has a decent format that kind of checks those boxes, or ticks those boxes. And I did talk to two firms that I noticed were ones that some of the local governments had used. One was a telephone survey firm, DKL Research, and it's mentioned in the report here. They do telephone surveys where and it's small. You can't do, if you're going to get someone on the phone to do a telephone survey, you can't do a ton of questions. It's typically about 20. It's just getting harder and harder to do that. Get good phone numbers and then get people who are willing to take the time on the phone to do that and keep them. Obviously, if we do this, we want to get a lot of information out beforehand and as it's deployed so that we get people who will participate and you get a good response rate. And at this ballpark they gave me was about 18,000 to do a 20 question survey. Another firm that we contacted that does the written or the questionnaire, where you can either do it in a hard copy that's sent to you, or you get a postcard, you go to a website and do it online, which is mostly how people are going to do this. But there are a lot of the municipalities that use Polco. It used to be, or it's affiliated with National Research Center. They partnered with the International City County Management Association years ago to do what's called the National Citizen Survey. And it's kind of a template of that provides a good evaluation of quality of life, services, top projects, things like that, interest from the public. And they were in the ballpark of 17,000. And we had a conference call, Heather and I did with Polco, and they'll get a proposal or they've sent one. I haven't had a chance to go through it. And when I drafted this, I know I mentioned authorization to receive a proposal, but they've already put something together, and you can evaluate that. But what was interesting about Polco is they've got this database that once you participate with it and you are an active user, they can do these enhancements, like additional surveys and follow-up questions, and so like Sheila Franklin responds to the initial survey and then is in their database there. Then you'd be kind of a part of this active pool of people to respond to other surveys or a very particular issue we want to get some survey feedback on. And so you'd be part of this digital database and you get that service for a year. And then after that, if you want to keep doing that baseline, it's like 8,000 a year or something like that. But the initial bigger one is in that realm of 17 plus to do that. But their format's pretty impressive to do something like this. So what I'd like to recommend is if we could move to get a formal quote from Polco or review what they submitted, and see if that might be one way to move forward. Obviously, as we get to, if we did that, we'd be getting with you to, the drafting of the questions, make sure it's capturing what it is you'd like to get as far as feedback from our residents. And I think it could establish a pretty good, baseline, and then if you did subsequent, not every year, but the bigger survey, maybe every 2 years, it gets you a good comparison.
Continue to be beneficial.
Yes.
And they also track actual true taxpayers
Yeah.
versus somebody's in
Fletcher's
Fletcher.
not had.
That's a question we had too. So it won't be 100% accurate as far as that, but yeah, what we try to pull it from a database that's just Fletcher residents. There will be some margin of error there. And what they do is you could do, or they would do a test, like a sampling of the residents, send that out, get that back, and then send one out to our entire population base or address base.
Is it like a database that when we send taxes out, database for actual tax that we give them? Actually,
My understanding is yes, yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how that all syncs up, but I know they do a sampling first, and you do a postcard, and then there's another part of it where they follow it up with a hard copy, and then do it townwide. Because we want to, and I'm basing this feedback from y'all that we want to try and do this. Not a sampling, but try and do it as best we can. At least give our residents, property owners, an opportunity to all have an opportunity to do the survey.
So are you saying that the postcard would go out to the people, say, you're invited to take this survey, and we only send it to people that we believe live in Fletcher?
Yes.
Or respond to that.
Yes.
And then they go into the survey from there, so,
Right.
okay, yeah.
And most of them, and I know a lot of some of the feedback from school government was make sure you do a pilot. So I guess what this firm does is that's kind of their pilot. They send out a sampling, and then we go try and get the entire, I guess, as best you can, our whole resident base. And it won't be, like I said, it won't be 100%, but it'll be pretty close.
I guess you lost me in what you're talking about with the pilot.
They'll send out a sample survey.
To everybody?
I think it's just a percent, it's just a sample a sample.
10% sample or
Right.
something?
Not the
First
entire,
section, right?
right, the first time. And the reason is you see how people respond, and did they complete the survey properly?
So it gives you a chance to tweak the survey before you go out
Yeah.
full.
It's kind of a test.
Okay.
And then, I'm not sure, we have to work through how they're pulling the addresses on that, for the full mail out, I guess, if you will, for lack of a better word. And then give, the entire population base an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, that was one concern I had, if you pull the actual zip code, you're pulling
Oh,
from Buncombe County.
Yeah, he started to mention zip code, and I'm like, no, that's not accurate for us, so we have to have a way to narrow that down, that it's not going to lie.
That's why I said, if we have a database where we send out taxes to actual taxpayers, we can say, here's our database, here's
Right.
something like that.
And it-
Renters won't be.
But that's the thing, no, I know, that's a good point, because that's one way, but that only hits property owners, so
It excludes a large portion.
yeah.
You know, but people live in apartment complexes, and stuff like that.
Could be people in houses too, and things like that.
So we got somebody, we got a few apartment complexes, so it's something where you can actually go to that apartment complex and do something.
Yeah, I know there's different ways to skin the cat, so to speak, to find out addresses.
I know by Facebook, you don't have people in Pennsylvania or South Carolina,
Right.
other posts in there.
But they have some kind of methodology to pull that. trigger.
Yeah, and again, it won't be 100%
Right.
full.
There's
We
always
will
someone
get
there.
someone who's outside, but as long as, you know, we get high concentration of
95%.
our residents, right?
I like the idea of having it an option of online, if somebody doesn't have access to online or something, they can come to town hall or they can paper copy.
No, they can do the paper copy too. We got.
Or we can, you know, they can call us and we can mail them one, if that seems to it.
Right.
But again, I don't think telephone survey would work at all for what we're trying to do.
I agree.
And they still do them, but it's getting pretty kind of antiquated, and now with going away from, you know, people not having landlines, or fewer and fewer have landlines, and mostly cell phones, it gets harder to get good numbers. I mean, we're having a challenge with our Blackboard calling system, the form of Connect CT Live. We're trying to think of, like we did in the tax bills that went out, we put a little flyer in there to try and capture more phone numbers for people. I think we'll do something with Public Works again to put something out in the garbage can, or, I don't know. We could do a flyer in the apartment complexes or townhomes with a trash pickup, but just something to get people to give us good phone numbers, yeah, that want it, you know, not everybody wants to get those notices.
I mean, with me on the telephone, I feel like I haven't had enough time to think about the questions they're asking.
Right.
Where with written,
Yeah.
you can take as long as you need.
It's just not as efficient.
Yeah.
There'll be people all day long that won't answer unless they know. You know, getting information is just, hey, there's a movie, blah, 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 and art, that's different when you want answers.
So basically, once these are sent in, they're relatively anonymous, right?
Yeah, that's another nice thing too, yeah, you've got anonymity there, so people don't, sometimes they feel more comfortable with that than a telephone survey or, you know, the other one's interview, which gets into like focus group type of discussions or
Sounds good to me.
I said, I have no problem with all, Polko?
Yeah, it's called Polco, and they're affiliated with this National Resource Center, National Research Center.
In opposition, everybody okay with that?
Thank you for gathering all this
Sure.
information. This is like a good wealth amount of information for
Yes,
us to,
thank you.
yeah, thank you.
I'll then work on getting that formal proposal or going through that and then sharing it with you and then see how we would proceed.
You may want to start polling the department heads to see brainstorming what issues they would like to see answers to.
Yeah, I mentioned at the last department head meeting that I'd like to, you know, once we get a draft, get it, at whatever stage, get a draft and bring it down. So like, you know, like working on performance measures, the police chief has worked on some things, some draft, performance measures that really you need, some kind of ongoing data comparison when you get kind of an initial, I guess, response, and it's something to, you know, to compare that to then 2 years down the road. So it's not necessarily a benchmark, but kind of that starting point. Okay, thank you.
Good. Anyone else on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the sewer extension project with ARP on the manager.
Okay, so in follow-up to our prior discussions about evaluating a sewer project as a possibility for use of our American Rescue Plan or ARP funds. I know I talked to you about Westville Road, North Hudson Lane, Dogwood Terrace. It's kind of a cluster off of Fanning Bridge Road. It's surrounded by areas that have sewer. So I started talking to staff from MSD about, yeah, is it possible or feasible to do this? I know I shared with you some initial estimate on costs, and then I want to talk to them kind of like what's the next steps if our council's involved in continuing to check this out, so to speak. So I was talking with a couple of their staff there with, Kevin Johnson and Hunter Carson. And Hunter had provided an initial estimate, just a decent ballpark on extending sewer service to those 3 streets. And then, but I wanted to talk a little bit more with Kevin Johnson about kind of the nuts and bolts of evaluating this. And so I had several conversations with them, and I wanted to put this into a report. And I guess first off, is it feasible to do this? Yes, it is feasible. You could do the extension to attach to the infrastructure from Glen Springs Drive, which is over in South Chase. So essentially, you'd be coming from South Chase, connecting to Westfell, and then Westfell to North Hudson Lane and Dogwood Terrace. And it should be running down Canning Bridge, I believe, as well, or at least maybe parts of it, the sewer line. It would require easements, probably approximately 2 to 3 easements coming across from Glen Springs over to Westfell. The ballpark estimate that the MSD staff had provided, I shared with you before, was $615,000, and that was not including right-of-way acquisition or disturbing the pavement. And then I had a conversation with Kevin Johnson about, kind of what are the other things that need to be considered as well if you wanted to use these funds toward it, and what other costs and other things to kind of factor into evaluating this. And when they do a sewer project, apparently there is a, they call it a development fee, and it's a per, I guess, connection, I'm gonna say per household, but it's probably per app, of $2,836. So that you got that development fee. Then you also have the cost of connecting to the line, the service line. So let's say the line's coming down Westfell Road. If you're a resident on Westfell Road, in order to connect to that service line, there's a cost there as well. You have to pay a plumber, it's anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to basically build the line that connects from your house to that service line that normally runs down the road. So that's a cost as well. And then, he did share with me the average monthly bill is about $30 a month for sewer service.
So the development fees, like the tap home fee you're talking about?
Yes, yeah. So, just with the development fee and the connection to your home, you're roughly $5,000 there. And then your average monthly bill is about $30 a month. If they extend sewer somewhere and you don't have septic available, their policy is you have to tap on. Obviously, everywhere that this project is looking to go, these folks have septic right now. If you have an active septic that's working, you don't have to tap on. I believe if it fails, though, or goes away, and you build a sewer line down there, they have to tap onto the sewer rather than trying to make the septic work in the location. Which leads to questions then, does a part of the project cost, does the town pay that developer that tap-on fee? Do they pay the cost for the plumber to do the line to the service line from the house? Or does the resident pay for both of those? I don't know. But these are things to think about. The other thing is a kind of a threshold. Do you do we want to make sure that at least, and I'm just throwing this out, this isn't some industry standard, but do we want to make sure at least 50% of the homeowners that are along this service area, these streets, at least half of them are willing to tap on? Because if, you do this and then you only get 2 people who tap into the sewer. And and it may not be that, maybe the response may be more.
It's gonna be.
But there's a lot of things to think about here. Do you pay for almost all that cost, and they pay for the balance? Do they want to be a sewer customer? Some people don't want to pay a sewer bill for $30. I know it's not very much, but they'd rather not have another bill like that. And then the next step to evaluate this is we have to do and we can handle, between myself and I might need some help from McGill, and MSD staff, but the next thing is doing this wastewater allocation application. And that's kind of the official, hey, we're interested in doing this. Would you be able to do it or put it in your, line of projects to complete? So I know it's a lot of things, but there are a lot of things to think about if you extend sewer to a neighborhood, really an old neighborhood, not a new one. Typically, they put sewer on the front end and not come back and put it in an area unless you have a situation of horribly failing septic tanks. There are issues with septic systems in there. I know we're at least aware of some in there. So it is challenging, and some people have to do a lot of pump out of their septic tanks. It's a lot to think about, but I need to put that out there. And if you're comfortable, continue to move forward. We'll do the next step is to do this wastewater allocation. But you also want to think about, do we do a letter to the residents either before or after that to see, are you even interested in considering this if the town used part of its ARP allocation to extend sewer through there?
Well, I'll say I have my reservations with it. I think the price tag wasn't what it was. I would be more comfortable. I've already seen what it is. I'm not as comfortable with that. I think the ARPA funds, I think we should have a goal to have the most impact for the most Fletcher residents. Although this is important, I'm not sure that it reaches that goal. I'd much rather see the ARPA funds go all the way towards the Greenway project and potentially even the increased cost of the courts at the park, in my opinion.
I mean, when the sewer was first put in, every house had to pay 100% of what it costs to get from their house to the line. So that should be a no-brainer. In terms of development fee, every house in Fletcher for many years paid higher sewage rates to pay for having them put in the first place. So I'm not sure that those 2 fees should be waived for these people. And I'm afraid if you tell them that's gonna cost them $2,800 plus $1,500 to $2,000, the only people you're gonna get are the probably 4 or 5 that are having sewage failures. The rest of them are gonna say, no, I don't wanna do it. And is it worth our while putting the $615,000 into it for $5?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important question to ask if you're going to go. And some people may look at it, and if you do the math, if your septic's in bad shape and you're constantly pumping it out, you're spending, I don't know, let's just say $1,000, $1,500 a year. Well, then that pays for itself to tap onto this in 2 or 3 years.
And I tell you what's gonna happen
And then you're comfortable, but
it's just gonna be like my next door neighbor. They were one of the few people that didn't tap on, and they're content to once every 5 years bring out a truck, have it pumped. Now, if it totally fails, then they're gonna wanna tap on.
yeah.
But they're kind of riding it cheap until they have no choice, and I think that's what's gonna happen with these people.
to survey it, just for the people that it would affect, would be a good decision to give us a tester. Because if only 3 people respond and say, yeah, I'd be interested, I'm with you.
But we have to decide, if we go that way, are we gonna say their cost, or is it gonna be the development fee plus the tax?
Everybody else has paid the 2 fees themselves.
So the letter needs to say that it'll cost you $5,000.
Absolutely, because you couldn't take on the liability of what's in their front yard and try to get a sewer line through to the road. I mean, that needs to be on the homeowner.
Once they're at $5,000, but that number might go down.
Well, and that
If it's
may
only
reduce
3
it down
people,
to-
that answers the question.
Absolutely.
I would want to know what other households, if any, have a failed system. I don't know that Hughes ever said that his septic system has failed. And when you have a failure of system, I thought that put a level of urgency where MSD would, because of health concerns, have to kick in and provide lines. But I don't know. It's just, I remember on the onset, when I first talked to him several months ago, he was pushing, and I was calling about 2 different issues, Hughes and another. And he said, well, is it a failed system? If it's a failed system, that puts it in a different category as far as emergency, health-wise. Now, whether that makes a difference financially, but it just sounded like it did. I don't know. So I would just want to know how many households are in a category of issue, or it's just something that's just something they'd rather have instead of their septic tank. Then, yeah, they need to understand that's $5,000 a household. I think over $500,000 is pretty steep to contribute to 3 roads, but again, I want to know, is there failed systems, or are there just systems that you would prefer to have replaced if you could?
But I think these costs are way, way low, because it doesn't include repair the roads. And if you look at every one of these goes down the middle of the road. Who's going to repair the road?
Yeah, he said-
Who's going to pay for that?
He said it doesn't cover pavement repair.
How many households?
I mean, it's,
How many households?
I'm sorry, I was gonna.
Well, there wasn't about 25 on this left side.
Yeah, so you're probably into the 35, 40 by the time include Dogwood Terrace and North Hudson Lane.
I don't know.
And part of Dogwood's already covered, they do have sewer.
I don't know that we've ever had anybody complain. But then that one system that I talked to him about, I said, what would this look like? And he said, you have to fill out an application and probably like $1,000 for the drop. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe if it's a safety concern and an emergency or immediate need, I don't know. I'm just a little confused as to why we would have to pay for that development all the way down.
You might have to pay for the installation and the fee to serve to keep it going. Because the sewer's not paying the water.
I think you've done an amazing job, getting them to go this far with information. I'm just a little, I guess I just don't understand as much as I should.
I quite frankly anticipated them saying it's not feasible to do this, or it was going to be even more or harder to do. I guess just as you all know this, looking at the information and discussing it, but probably the biggest concern is it's just a caution, you spend this much money for potentially, maybe it's going to be more, but maybe 3 or 4 people tapping on, and is it a good use of the resources to do that?
I'll say I can't get behind it unless there's a real health concern.
But even there, isn't the burden still on the homeowner?
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
I mean, they chose to buy the property in the first place knowing that it wasn't on a sewer line.
Yeah.
Did you make it where they paid instead of $5,000, pay a little bit more, have more teeth in the game? I mean, it's like
There's
$8,000.
no way you're gonna get that.
Yeah, my concern, Trevor, if people would pay it, looking at it, yeah.
They might not do it for $5,000,
I don't think
$5,000.
it's $5,000.
Yeah.
I don't either.
If I was living on that street, let's just say you're retired or whatever your situation is and your septic's doing okay, yeah, it's got some issues, maybe you got to pump it out a little bit more. I'd be reluctant to tap on just because I want to pay the $5,000 plus another $30 a month.
And all the
Just
growth is
for
gone.
the
in that
peace of
section.
mind. Unless my septic is in horrible condition, or I know it's heading that way. Because that gets really costly. You had a really bad septic and you have a good, drain area, the drain field. It can be really costly.
Should we just send a questionnaire only to these houses saying that the town council is considering what the options are for sewer, and that we believe the upfront cost will be at least $5,000, would you be willing to sign a commitment to tap on if we move forward with the project? And if you only get 5 houses, then we just say it's not worth it.
Or is your system failing? That would give some firsthand
Yeah,
knowledge.
just have to think about a letter to kind of gauge that interest.
I mean, that would help if we knew how many people were in it.
And people respond too.
Well, if they don't respond,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that tells me they don't care.
Yeah, true, but I mean, make sure it gets in front of them sometimes. It's not they.
But when the sewer initially went in, the sewer district threatened everybody. They told everybody that if you didn't tap on initially, there would be higher fees when you tapped on.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're enforcing that.
I know other places where they've extended sewer, it's usually compulsory that area goes that you have to tap on. I don't know how they enforce that, but.
My neighbor just pumped out last week.
I spoke to a lady down here, she's on her third drain field, her final. She's had it repaired twice and she's on her third one and she can't have any more, but it's working fine now. So I don't think if it's not failed, I don't see how people don't spend $5,000 just to tap in.
I can work on a letter. I want to.
Well, I'll say I just reviewed the letter. I'm gonna get something right here. That sounds like council wants to go a different direction.
I feel better knowing exactly if we have any that have failed and they just not come forward, or they're having major issues, because there's more than one way to take care of something, so, possibly, so I'd like to know.
Not that letter being a commitment saying we're going to do it, just.
No.
Right, we're putting pillars out there.
Just
right?
inquiring.
I mean, who knows, maybe the only people that are interested are four or five people down here that can run a short line and not have to build the whole thing.
Absolutely, that's the way I'm looking at it. Didn't you say that Dogwood Terrace has already got a lot in place?
They've got, looks like 4 homes are served on Dogwood Terrace. The map that has the yellow
Shouldn't have any.
squiggly line, yellow outline shows those areas that don't have it. And then you can see the green line there, it looks like there's approximately 4 houses on Dogwood Terrace.
I know initially when the sewers were put in, this was not included because we were told that to do these lots, they had to install a pump station, which was very, very expensive.
It says right here in the back, it has to be gravity fitted.
Well, that's,
We'll consider gravity.
obviously they figured out an option on the west side there that they didn't think about originally.
I'm based on, because I know they don't like doing pump stations, that I'm thinking they must know that they can do it by gravity to the Glen Springs Drive connection.
But I mean, other people that are on this same sewer district, they're always expanding this sewer district. Now, cities aren't paying for these expansions, are they?
Exactly.
So why should we pay for it? I mean, if it can be expanded by the sewer district, why aren't they doing it?
It's up to the developer when it gets built.
Yeah, but I've seen projects for like mobile home parks, I've seen other projects where they've gone in it. So I'm gonna do a little bit of digging on that.
Yeah, In those instances, I think there's had to be like an imminent public health threat, like the septic system is, a system or systems are horrible that are just failing that serve the residents there. That's my understanding when they've stepped in.
Well, that's the way I'm kind of looking at it.
Yes.
Is this a imminent issue for you?
Yeah. If that's, if that's what you want, I can work on something and share it with y'all. Yeah, and I'll touch base, I want to touch base with the staff from MSD too, to get their feedback on this, to make sure we're representing this accurately. I mean, I pretty much got out everything here, but just keep them engaged or involved on it.
Absolutely.
You know what I think actually happened? They initially said they couldn't do this area because it needed a pump station, but that decision was made before South Chase was built. Then they built South Chase and ran the lines up behind it. But when they did that, they should have considered adding these at the time.
Yeah. Anything more from council on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to your comments, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Just a couple things. I know we have a lot of agenda items here to discuss tonight. The NFLP, or New Fletcher Library Partners, they're going to meet in October, and I just, I've had some communication with the president, the vice president, and which is Doug Agor's president, and Grace Steele is the vice president of that. And they're an incorporated group now. They're a 501c3 organization that's been trying to raise money and awareness, but they're getting frustrated, and I think some of the discussion or definitely the planned agenda item of discussion is, do they continue on with this or do they disband? Just status of the library project. And so I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm going to talk to Doug and Grace later this week. I think Thursday I'll meet with them, because the meeting they have in October I can't attend. I've got a conflict with that day, so I won't be in town right then. So I'm just giving you a heads up. And understandably they're getting frustrated, and what I'm going to suggest is, and I understand, there's got to be some, just as it needs to be for y'all, unless the town decides to pay for the whole facility, which we understand is kind of ridiculous, since 85% of the patrons don't live in Fletcher proper that use the facility. But it needs to get to a point, are they making progress or not? And so I'm going to talk to them about, maybe they have a target date where we're not making meaningful progress in partnership with the county to do this, then there's some potential disintegration of that entity. So
I hate to hear that they're considering disbanding, but I certainly understand. I particularly hate it because there is effort, I think, at least a little bit on both sides. But I think it actually needs to get to a point where, and I think we discussed this too, maybe we need to move on at some point, particularly talking about the land on the north side of town hall. Just the thoughts.
So, and you don't have to, I just wanted you to be aware of this, and whatever feedback, let me know now or after the meeting or at any point, but that's happening, and you gotta understand it. It's disappointing. Maybe some progress will be made, I don't know. I'll keep working on it as long as it's a priority.
My wishes.
Okay. Well, if there's no questions or comments on that, the next thing was just, we're getting some requests for just various, I call it traffic calming or traffic safety requests, and some of these is recurring, some of it's new. I know in Windsor Forest and kind of Steve Watkins has been mostly the spokesperson, I guess, for the neighborhood there. We had a recent request from him that for a four-way stop on that first stop sign coming into Windsor Forest. We had a traffic engineer, I look at it, I had staff look at it, and the recommendation was not to put a four-way stop. It's a two-way stop right now. It's that first, when you pull in the main entrance of Windsor Forest, there's two cross streets that you come up to really quickly there. The recommendation of the traffic engineer was to trim down the vegetation to see a little bit better rather than another stop sign on each side. There was also a concern coming off of Fanning Bridge as you're coming to a stop sign right away too. Not as much that leaving Windsor Forest and coming up to
But
it.
it could back up on the Fanning Bridge.
Yeah, that was one other concern. So I conveyed this back. I know I copied you all on this, and obviously I didn't like the response on it, but maybe if that continues to be an issue, then it gets revisited for making it a four-way stop. And another one that it seems like we just continue to get periodic. And some of the requests about this is now I'm switching to South Chase. So, your main drag, and then there's Woodhill Drive, and then South Chase Drive. And it, to some extent, is a cut-through neighborhood for, avoiding traffic on 25 and Fanning Bridge that backs up. That's been one issue that, not always, but comes up from time to time. And then the other is speeding and stop sign violations. Those are probably the top ones. So some of that's enforcement, okay? And we've had the police department various times do enforcement in there. I don't know how many months ago, the chief, they I don't know if they took several days, but they did a bunch of enforcement in there. And most of the stop sign violations were actually residents who
That's
lived
what,
in
every
those
time
spaces.
they come up, that's
They
gonna
had people coming through and the speeding. And the speeding's not as big. Really, when you put the traffic counting data, there's really not as much of a speeding issue, but more compliance with stop signs in there. But in light of the, it keeps coming up, I was going to have, and Jabo's identified a traffic engineer, we'll just sit down and let's look at cut-through traffic, because we know that's one issue. The stop signs violations and speeding, and see they take a look at the neighborhood and what suggestions do they have for traffic calming measures in there. The latest request from a resident in there was to put speed bumps right in front of the stop signs. And I think they'd seen it in Foxglyn. I'm trying to remember the neighborhood that had seen that, and they liked it. And we have more concerns than I guess positive comments about speed bumps or speed cables. There's different iterations of these pumps to slow you down. So we were going to do that and not try and lead them towards any outcome, but just see what suggestions that might help to address some of these concerns of the residents in there. And that's a large development, so I mean, it's a lot of people to consider as far as safety, traffic flow, quality of life, what have you. So I've just given you information on that, and it's not that costly to do a study of it. And there's all kinds of traffic. We don't do that a lot, but I think we're getting enough. This is rising to that level.
But if you start putting in speed bumps, everybody in every subdivision is gonna come back and demand the same thing, and that's gonna get expensive. To me, the biggest thing is we should just increase enforcement and let them get tired of getting tickets, and maybe they'll slow down and stop running the stop signs.
Even with speed bumps, how's that, I work with, plow for snows.
Not well.
Not well. I mean, that's another downside, is
I would
the
never
maintenance.
recommend that, but I definitely would recommend what Bob said, because it's amazing just having a little bit more monitoring or a uptick on that. I think you get results, people slow down. Can you do signage that says, not cut through or something like that?
Yeah,
I think it'd be really difficult to
Okay.
monitor that, but
It's
if
hard.
you've got more
Yeah.
police presence for the running of the stop signs, and then people that use it for cut through, they're really hesitating if they know that police are sitting in there. At particular times, it would be great for them to do that on a regular basis. I don't want to prevent you from sharing all your other comments, but
Yeah, I only have one other thing, so that was,
Okay. South Chase in particular, resident, we've heard some buzz in regards to the corner.
Oh, yeah.
This is in regards to actually the ditches. I know several months ago, a resident in Hoover Valley Estate shared with me that used to, they clean the ditches on a regular basis, and now they don't. And then this resident in South Chase said that the ditches there, that there's some drainage that goes through there, and she said that the overgrowth is so bad that sometimes she tries to go down there and cut it herself, but she's not in a position to do that. And she's, not someone that ought to be on the side of the road trying to cut, especially, her size and her age. So I was just wondering, I'm sure Jabo has something on a regular basis or maybe a schedule, but it is a, town road. I think we really need a rotational amount of weeding that happens on some of the streets. Because this is at the beginning of the entrance and going down.
yes, ask where you're talking specifically. Okay, so this is off of Woodhill or off?
It's at the beginning of Woodhill, off 25 and Woodhill, and when you take a right into Woodhill there coming from Town Hall, it's that whole strip of that first block that is just overgrown, and you can't, she says it can't be good for the drainage or the drainage.
It's on the
or
right
anything.
when you're coming in there on
To
Woodhill.
me, that's a homeowner issue, that's not a city issue.
Yeah,
It's a city street and it's not owned by a
Yeah,
homeowner.
what you're not talking about clearing on the street, you're talking about clearing in the ditch.
It's the ditch of the street, it's not home-owned, it's that strip that goes, it's almost as long as a city block. Like, to the right is the pump, the new pump station, to the left is that old, drive that goes to,
Westville.
yeah. So all along through there is drainage, and that's not homeowner
Part
responsibility.
of the maintenance of the road.
Yeah.
I know we've had requests and we said no because it was off onto the private property, like those, I think Wheeling cypresses or something going in there about trimming those back. Because it does go into the private property overside.
Oh, yeah,
We'll
well,
take
I
a
know
look
there's
at
a
it.
home on that corner,
Yeah,
but I'm just talking about just even the piece there.
But even the piece in front, that property is owned by somebody.
Well, I don't know who owns it that's on that whole corner right there, but the drive goes to Westville, and there's a ditch on either side with drain lines, and it just is in terrible shape.
It's the road drainage ditch. The grate where the road drains all rainwater into that drainage ditch is what she
That's
said.
part of the road.
Yeah, it's
So
part of
it'd
it.
be part of the Fletcher maintenance.
Just like any road up and down 25's had those drainage things, it's the same thing.
we'll take a look at it. Yeah, just trying to,
I
make
appreciate
sure
it.
locate that where that is. And
Or even if Jefo can ever give us a diagram of what they take care of, and I understand homeowners are responsible for their own ditches and property and all that, but even if we can explain, okay, they do this part or this part, or, I can tell them.
Yeah, I mean, if
if
there's drainage culverts failing or some blockage, on the drainage culvert that is part of the street or feeds into the street or goes under, I know that we're addressing that.
Okay.
Grass cutting is primarily Highway 25, that right away in there that's running through town, and then some other parts near the town property, East End but we'll go take a look at it.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yep. And this last thing was, I attended the Henderson County Transportation Advisory Committee. So the Henderson County TAC, Bob's on that, and I think I'm the alternate technically. So I attended a recent meeting of that, and just for your information, because I asked, so when is the expected completion for I-26, the widening of it, and just in case you're getting questions, it's still on schedule, but it's May of 2024, so May of 2024 for I-26. I guess at least the part coming through Henderson County, I think this may be including on the Buncombe County side too, but May of 2024. Rutledge Road is supposed to be resurfaced. As we all know, they did it on the Buncombe County side, but not the Henderson County side. And I asked Lonnie Watkins at the TAC meeting, it apparently is under contract, but the contractor that they awarded the bid to is so far behind with work that he was estimating it's not going to be resurfaced until the fall of next year, or October of next year. I thought, really? So it looks like it's about a year out from that being done, and just FYI in case, because we get complaints about the condition of the road. We don't like it either. And then I-26.
The rest of them are.
It's a different district.
Well, it's a different division, different division.
One's Division 13, one's Division 14.
Yeah.
Separate pots of money.
You'd think they'd coordinate that because that's,
Exactly.
a continuous road, but anyways, so just FYI on those two construction projects or transportation related projects. And then the STIP, which is that State Transportation Improvement Plan, which is this kind of DOT's big project list for funding. They've infused a bunch more money into that, and it basically, I think it's trying to get all these projects that are backed out now or fallen off the list, but they put $7.8 billion in additional funds back into the STIP from excess sales tax revenue. And I don't think this is going to be an ongoing thing, but they're basically trying to either reinstate some projects or get caught up. So Sweeten Creek Road will go back on the list.
Yeah, they'll take that off.
And future I-26 widening, which I think gets to that part on the other side of Asheville of the I-26 project. And that's all I have.
Any more business from council? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second. Second. A motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?